5, and go.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have everybody that we were expecting to have here today. This is a joint meeting of the HRA and EDA board members to further discuss a possible merger of the two organizations. Just a reminder, this is day 2 of the discussion. Nothing has been decided. This is a discussion. Today what we're going to do is, this is an opportunity for each organization to ask the other organization questions, and questions of Jason as well. And what we'll do is we'll go around the room just so we can be organized about it, and we'll see where this brings us today. Is there anyone that would like to start with questions?
Maybe a question just to clear up.
Jason, you have the floor.
Thank you, Steve. Did everybody receive the information that went back and forth? So the EDA sent us a document to the HRA board members with the history and some context, and then the HRA had sent the EDA some document about ideas and thoughts and such. Did everybody get those? Okay. Just want to make sure we all. Okay, great. That was the only question I had. Just make sure everybody's on the same page.
Excuse me, Jason. Sorry. Thank you, Jason. Yeah.
James, do we have to pass the microphone?
It should pick it up.
Okay. Okay, well, since we started with Jason, Chris, do you have any questions, comments?
Overall, I think I appreciated getting the 2 documents, both very helpful. A lot of the concerns that I had were addressed with the HRA board proposal, and those were, I think that one was a concern about the ability about management bandwidth at the combined entity, and how that was going to related to some areas that are some non-housing areas, and I think that that's been addressed to my satisfaction in the joint memo. Also, I think that the profile of the proposed hire as a number 2 person with a strong background and skill set in development, I think was a very positive thing as well, and I would support that direction. I think that would reinforce the notion that the synergies of the combined entity are to build new housing, develop new business, new economic opportunities, and I think that there are a lot of synergies. The only hangover that I didn't see addressed here, and I don't know how significant an issue it is, and that was that we'd spoken last time about the audit for the EDA being still a work in progress. I just have a question about, are there open issues of concern that we need to discuss, and when is that audit? Is it reasonable to say that we can move the process? We can put that as a criterion for the process going forward.
Well, the audit was finished.
Okay.
In January, we got those documents. It was delayed, but it was, I think in the audit that raised concerns. It was just a matter of not having the material information necessary.
That was, I'm sorry, Mark, that was
21. The 22 audit started just now.
Okay.
The request for documents came last week, and so we have those documents. And our accountant has already started to produce some documents on request. So we should, I would imagine about a month, 6 weeks. We've had.
Okay, that's great. It was a little less clear last time whether that was a big issue or not.
And Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have control over when that audit is started. We have to wait on the auditors to contact us.
Right, so we just received that
Yeah.
initial request for documents about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and
So
even
now
in
it's
tax season,
2022
it's
starts.
not
So
gonna be quick.
the ball starts rolling out for 2022.
And the concerns, as I remember, that were raised in the audit, a lot of them just had to do with, like, this is a small town.
Right, I
People
mean,
know
the
each
issues
other.
where, you don't have enough people to, let's say, govern the money flow. We're a small community, we don't have 5 or 6 people with eyes on the checkbook, so it's just not the way it's gonna happen. And another issue was, we have too much money in the bank account, so we'll consider moving some money. address that.
Maybe just item to add to the checklist would be just to share a copy of the 21 audit.
Yeah, we can
That's
certainly
yeah.
throw that out, our results to everybody that we're here.
You Christian, you should have it. I
Yeah.
think I sent it to the bottom.
We received the 20.
Oh, okay. I'll resend it to you though.
That's I'm having a problem with my spam
Yeah.
folder.
You're not alone.
That's it.
Mary?
So I can add to that just some history. Every year, the EDA audit has those same things.
Right.
It's separation of duties,
Yeah.
and the auditors acknowledge that it will always be that way. And we did create more bank accounts to move the money around, but it just didn't get shuffled around.
And I didn't want to assume a problem.
So,
That's it.
yeah, it's just standard ops. I have a couple of things. One thing is, in the document that was created by the HRA, Jason included the org chart. And in a discussion that some of us had last week, I requested that we amend the org chart by adding down here where the development and program manager, the second in command, at an equal level of responsibility is the Board of Governors for Superior National and the management team at the golf course. So that we all are keeping in mind that that group is going to continue to do most of the work relevant to Superior National. And I would just remind everyone that I am under contract with Superior National to coordinate a lot of that work. So,
Yet another example of a small town.
another example of a small town, we stack up our hats. And further clarification, I am not receiving payment. I have a contract that says I can be paid, but I'm taking golf in trade because it's fun for me to get out with my family and friends and enjoy the course. Then the other two things that I think we want to get today, we've talked about the staffing position, but I'm hoping that at the meeting today we have time to discuss the potential makeup of what a merged board might look like if we get that far in our discussion. We have shared some thoughts about that, but let's hear from the others before we go there, probably. I think that's all I have for
The one comment I have, and I just want to make sure Jason is comfortable with this. There was a comment in the HRA document about the golf course and making sure that the golf course, the management of the golf course would not overly burden the staff of the HRA EDA combination if that moves forward. And as of right now, we have a very active Board of Governors and a very active management team. Ultimately, the responsibility of the golf course does fall to the EDA, and just a reminder for everybody that that was at least the primary reason that the EDA, as I understand it, was created all those years ago. And so there is some responsibility there. We're trying to shield the staff of the combined EDA HRA from too much distractions from that with the management team and the Board of Governors, but we just have to all remember that that is where the responsibility lies.
And we've just gone through a very meaningful strategic planning process with Superior National. We had a group of 15 people that came together and met 4 times, and made some great plans for going forward with the transition in leadership that's occurring there. So, more about that at another time.
Question just to follow up, Steve. Would the executive director in this merger attend all of the golf course meetings?
So the Board of Governors meets twice a year,
Typically.
Historically, the EDA director has attended the Board of Governors meeting, but not always. As of right now, the Board of Governors and the management team is very active. I think it would depend on whether or not the board wanted to ask the executive director to attend and whether the executive director wanted to attend. But I don't think, as of right now and in the past history, I don't know that it's mandatory.
I would say likely the Board of Governors meeting, those occur prior to the opening of the golf course and at the end of the season, but not the management team. The management team is really the ones that roll up their sleeves and
Sure.
look over the dailiness, so.
It's 2 meetings, they're not long, it's not overly burdensome.
I would think that's important. I'd just
Yeah.
like to state that.
The communication,
meetings, yeah.
all the communications would be provided as appropriate, regardless of attendance.
Well, getting on to the merger, I think I expressed my thoughts previously, and I thought more about my thoughts, and, and I think they've been affirmed, and doing some more research and thinking. In theory, and in my background training, this is an opportunity to assess and look at opportunities for more efficiency, less redundancy, and to diversify staffing a little bit and not be in silos. So I think that's still clear to me, but that's theory. And putting it into practice, I think, is another matter. But putting it into practice, I think, Jason, from what I know about you and what I've analyzed other people saying, that you're the person that could do this. And so thank you for that. It adds to the timing. I think more importantly, you have the willingness and desire to do it. And I think you've expressed a really good insight into what needs to be done and how to manage that. And I know way back when I was an administrator in an office of three of us, and we had a similar design, a much bigger office facility. But when you're in the same kind of room, even with a small door, you sort of know what's going on. You cannot help it, that happens. So I think you have that insight as well. But I think it's just an opportunity that we should look at. And I really think we're going to have a better delivery system to the public. But time will tell, but I think it's worth the time, and it's timely to try it. If we're going to do it, now it's now rather than never. So. Mr. Mills, I pass to you.
Thank you. I would pretty much echo Mayor. I also just wanted to share the meeting that Mary referenced was HRA Director from HRA Board Chair Salmis and HRA Director Jason Hale, and then Mayor Benson and myself, and also EDA Interim Director Kevin. So it was kind of a ad hoc-ish personnel meeting sort of thing to try to talk about that structure and all that. And it was really productive and beneficial, and to work through things and to think through things. And it gave me more confidence in the path of consolidation or merging. And it also, though, raised, I think, some things we need to talk about as far as the support that is really needed. And perhaps it's a separate issue, but of course it's all tied together here. So that's something that I want to make sure we don't lose sight of. Is yes, we want all of our focus on housing, and yes, there are some very important and significant EDA projects still happening, and future ones that are potentially even larger. And yes, the support is still needed regardless of the structure. So just making sure we really take that seriously moving forward when we're talking budget. So it's not now. Right now we're just talking merger. So I don't think I have any further questions at this point. Just the idea that I'm sure we've all heard Jason saying is that there's the same amount of work. It's just how are you going to get it done, and what's the most efficient way or productive way, or what's the best way to leverage. And that's kind of the take I'm getting from this, is that the merger is the way to be more productive and to have more flexibility, frankly, and just more leverage. So pass.
Great.
I'm a little bit confused about what we're trying to achieve here. And you listed a bunch of great things, Dave.
That's what I'm trying to achieve.
Efficiency, productivity, flexibility. These are not necessarily things that are complementary to each other. They're often in competition with each other. In my understanding of why the HRA was created as a separate entity in the beginning, is because we were not searching for efficiency, we were searching for productivity. We wanted to see effectiveness in a particular area. We wanted to focus resources specifically on it. That's not flexibility. It's not efficiency. It's different than those. It was a conscious decision to not do those things and instead pour resources into an issue that the community says has been a problem for a long time. And a lot of times in this conversation, I hear us going back to those concepts as what we're trying to achieve now, and I don't know why. What changed? Why are we now deciding that that effectiveness is not our top goal? Even though we're saying it's our top goal, it's certainly not acting like it. And I don't understand why. So, if somebody wants to try to address that, that'd be great. But I do have a couple of specific questions and then a couple of concerns that I want to share. The budget was sent around, it's not clear to me whether or not the $60,000 that the EDA currently has in their budget to make bond payments towards the business park is still in the budget. It's not clear to me. I don't see where it's listed on the expenses of the joint budget, so I just need some clarification if that still is the plan. One of the things that makes me wonder if it's still the plan is the language about what the new strategic direction is specifically excludes, like uses words to exclude all of the current things the EDA is doing. And so what's our plan here? How are we going to deal with the business park if the strategic direction of the new joint board specifically says we're not going to deal with the business park? And are we still making the bond payment that we all committed to make? How are we going to deal with the golf course? I really am not comfortable with the current plan. I'm going to take it as it is. I don't get a vote in this. But if it was my organization that someone was asking me to represent, I would not accept the plan that you're proposing that says, oh, you don't have to worry about that significant major asset that is the primary responsibility for the creation of this original organization. I've seen it be that way for most of the time I've been here, and I don't know what the heck why are we doing that? It just doesn't make any sense to me. The EDA is responsible for the golf course. The EDA staff should help the EDA board carry out that primary responsibility. And a lot of different models I've seen have really tried to avoid that, and I just don't feel like that's a healthy way to do it. And I'm hearing that same, what I think is unhealthy suggestion again, that we try and segregate the golf course, the major asset that's owned by the EDA, from this new group. And I wonder, do we really intend to focus on housing at the expense of all the things that the EDA is currently doing? And is that a good and healthy thing? And I wouldn't ever use the word efficiency in this conversation again, just to put a finer point on what I think you were saying, Dave, which is we're going to need more resources to accomplish these things. We're not trying to be efficient. We're going to go ask for more money. We need more money. We need more time. We need more staff. We need more resources. Let's not try and kid anybody about that. Let's be honest up front about that, and let's not use the word efficient anymore, because that is not a goal that I think is worth us going towards here. So, $60,000 in the budget to make the bond payment, still there?
Yeah, there's a lot there. I'm going to be really quick about the budget piece and about the priorities piece, the strategic plan. The intent was not by any means, when it was drafted, trying to reflect the board members' concerns. The intent was not at all to ignore the existing conditions and requirements. The spirit of that document was just to say new things that the EDA would be working on, like new priorities, not ignoring what is already the responsibility of the EDA. So I think that's just miscommunication with maybe how it was typed on my part. That was never a request from my board members or from anybody else to say we're going to ignore the business park or the golf course. That wasn't it at all. It was just to say when we look forward at new things that the EDA could do to grow, here are the areas in which economic development could be implemented in the community. So I want to be clear about that. So I think that was just purely a miscommunication, not an intent at all. The budget, the $60,000 is still there, and we can go over where. If it's not listed in there, it's because it wasn't, that would have been my fault in not explicitly calling it out.
If I've got a table that just has a slightly more detailed look, I'd be happy to just glance at it and be reassured.
Sure, yeah, it doesn't, I guess the point is, it's gotta be made. So it's kind of, I don't wanna say it's an irrelevant question, it's a really big important thing to point out, but that's going to be in the budget.
And the words on the page say, a levy increase is not required. If the 60,000 is not there, a levy increase is required.
No, it's not.
It's in, there's $219,000 in direct project assistance for business development and housing, and I'm sure the 60 comes out of the 219.
Is there another level of detail that we could all see? Just me,
Well,
I
no,
won't speak
because,
for anybody else.
so all I can say is that we're talking about merging two existing approved budgets that works for specific items. And to Chair Simons' exact point, we would take it out of that space, and then there would be the balance of investment in project-specific things. So there is not a finer tooth comb to go through this because there's nothing else to unpack yet. We have to cover existing liabilities, and then we have the things that were approved on our budget and the board's budget, and then the board would have to decide, hey, do we need to redo and think more deeply about the budget? This is just a general, here's how it could look, kind of a high-level view. That further work we need to be done later to reprioritize what the budget, a joint budget needs to look like. But there is a way in which this works that there's no increase that's required at all. Because those things we're not increasing any particular cost.
In the 2023 levy.
Correct.
We know we can't increase the 2023 levy, it's done.
Right.
That's what it says right here, 2023, so it doesn't talk about 24. But the 60, for sure, no one would disregard any commitments of either organization.
Well, let's say a lot of the communication around this discussion could lead a person to think exactly what I think, which is that the EDA's current focus is not addressed at all. And you know, you put all of it together, it leaves me wondering.
Well, Mike, are you referring to the document that has the HRA logo on it?
Yeah.
So this document was created, the HRA board members were requested to share their thoughts and their questions, and that's what this is. This isn't our proposal for what should be. These are the questions from mostly two of our board members. There's some, it could be look like this, it could look like that, but this isn't, we're not done. This is questions, mostly from Commissioners Gabler and O'Brien, mostly wrote this document with their questions.
Maybe you two could help me then figure out what that joint budget is.
Well, they didn't do the budget.
They didn't do the budget. I did the budget
We had all sorts of concerns. But we
Yeah,
did not
I
do
think
the budget.
my concern was that, we're kind of at a decision point for the EDA. EDA needs to hire somebody to replace Beth. And so one profile, if the EDA's, if the profile of the person you're going to hire is going to be different, if the primary responsibility of that person is going to be the director to manage the existing EDA programs, to manage the business park, manage the golf course, you want a COO kind of a person who's just a good operations manager. I think that part of the vision for why it made sense to combine the two is to capitalize on potential development opportunities that piggyback on the housing and economic development, and to try to orient the EDA as an organization looking forward that's taking advantage of economic development opportunities and housing development opportunities. And I think that I think that the concern I had was, I think that's an exciting vision, an exciting opportunity for EDA. It does mean a different kind of person. I mean, Jason's wasn't hired because he's a great COO and really good at managing a golf course and a rec park, or I mean, in a business park. That's would be a mismatch in why, in his talents to what the opportunity is. And so I think that the concern I had was that we need to, if you want to capitalize on these synergies, we need to do it in a way that certainly those bases need to be covered, but it need to be covered in a way that it doesn't become half of his job to manage those. In other words, he didn't have to jettison attention that he's currently spending to opportunities for future development, because he's got to actively, figure out some problem with the problems at the golf course or the business park. And so I don't know much about either of those entities. So I guess my concern that I guess the way that I was assured, or was a response I got was that the golf course was managed well and fairly autonomously to the EDA management. That the Board of Governors plays an active role in doing that, and I think that's great. And I would expect that would continue. If it broke for some reason, then yes, Jason would be responsible for stepping in and fixing it, coming up with another way to manage that problem. And likewise, issues could come up at the business park where something goes off the rails, and he's got to intervene to bring resources to bear to fix that problem. But I think that the intent was to just try to clarify which path is EDA taking going forward. What kind of person are we looking for to replace that? And there are two different kinds of people. And it's an operational person or someone to provide more horsepower on development. And so that was, that's kind of where we, the questions that I raised, and I think that probably led to some of the stuff in the document here.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And just to be clear, the idea of a joint group is not weird or strange or wrong. It's common, right? There's plenty of them in Minnesota. It's not the direction that we originally picked. I still think we're missing the effort level that will be required of whomever is in charge of this organization point. I think we're purposely avoiding it or suggesting things that are just not true about how it's going to be, to say that there'll be some division that'll keep them away from that. If this person is supervising the person that's doing all that, they have all the supervisory responsibilities. I mean, there's just no freedom in a small group like that. They all have to share all these burdens. And I just want to be clear about that. And I heard Jason say that loud and clear to me when we had this group down at City Hall, which is, this is going to be complicated, this is going to slow everything down, this is going to take a lot of extra work for a while until we get good at this. That's the message I think is important to put out there right now.
Go slow and go fast.
I mean, if this is the direction you want to go, let's just say that it's going to be a mess for a little while while we figure out how to make this work. And I'll be sad about that, but if that leads to a better place, so be it.
What are you being sad about?
That it's going to be a mess for a little while.
Oh, that's always.
So I feel like we're finally starting to make some progress on an issue because of the decisions that were made by the community to go in this direction.
Well, and if I may address, probably your first questions about what changed, it's probably easiest to say what didn't change, our need for housing. Otherwise, we have a new city council, we have a new county board, the HRA board was formed, we have an HRA director, we have a county administrator who got his feet underneath us. COVID ended, and there's just a whole lot of everything changing. And so I think it's wise to look at it. Things are always changing. We got to see, all right, how are we doing? Is this the way to do it? And I'll still say there's efficiencies, because I believe there is efficiencies with synergy, and you can have efficiencies and need more resources, both. Like, it's not an either or. Like, and as an elected official, I'm always looking for efficiencies, right? That's part of my burden.
Great.
And as administrator, you're always pushing back.
You guys at the county could, provide a lot of efficiencies to these organizations, to
buy the city or what?
No,
Oh.
to buy this. Like, what, do they have a personnel policy? Do they have a payroll system? Do they have, I mean, there's all kinds of things. There's 30 or 40 employees that the EDA has in the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no backbone that, I mean, there's a small group that has to manage that. Whereas either, you know, the city and the county have these things, structures in place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna point out, we're halfway through this, we've got some more people that we have to get around the room to, and I wanna make sure everybody has a chance to speak. Mike, I wrote down 3 things that you said to put on our checklist to think about moving forward, some more detail on the budget, which I think you asked for, maybe a fleshed out, more combined vision plan, than what we have currently. And then also to think about in 2024, what the asks might look like in the future in terms of staffing and money, et cetera, et cetera.
Those sound great. I think they'll be useful for you all to make this decision.
All right, Mr. Gabler?
Thanks. Well, a couple things. The general focuses I had was financial issues, financial management of the EDA, and the 2021 audit got a clean opinion. I'm assuming 22 will also. But I'm curious as to what the bottom lines look like in 22 financial statements without an audit. I mean, by now you must have some feeling for what the financial statements look like. And did we see more progress in 2022 on either paying off some of the debts to the various county or different operations, or did the golf course perform better in 2022? I mean, just general thoughts like that, I'd be curious as to how you see the EDA's financial performance in 2022.
Mark, do you think you can address those?
Yeah, the 2022 was slightly under expectations, but it performed fine. Cash flow was enough there. We ended the year with cash to take care of all the responsibilities. There's still an issue of the bond, if the golf course is going to be taking care of that bond or not. But going forward, in 2023, decided to increase revenue and staffing to see if we can, what happens with those changes, if it's possible. If there's cash flow there, enough cash flow there, we can take care of that obligation. But right now, it's meeting its cash flow needs. So, and last year, and going forward, it looks, I'm optimistic that we'll have a better 23 than 22. So.
Well, thanks. I think, just.
And, we could forward, it's financial statements on the HRA board as well, too. That's not a difficult thing. We have January booked, and we can send those out. February's being worked out right now. Should have in about a week or so. So.
Sure.
Yeah.
For both the EDA and the
Right,
golf
yeah.
course.
So it won't be hard to do. So.
Well, that just kind of highlights the point that the golf course continues to be an issue, and it's going to continue
It's
to
going
be
to
an
be.
issue. And I golf there a couple times a week, so I love the golf course. But the reality is, I can see the stress on the staff at the golf course. I can see the stress on the maintenance. I can see deferred maintenance. I can go right down that list of things. And really, it may be time to rethink the business plan for the golf course, and maybe even the organizational structure of it. I don't have any specific thoughts about that, but it seems to me that's something the EDA ought to be doing, or should be doing. And so a merged organization, that's going to take some energy, and it's going to take some time, is my view of it. And I want to point that out as a concern.
I agree the golf course is a big responsibility that a lot of people are ambiguous about. They just really don't know. The people that enjoy it and want to see the amenities still in place, but does it really financially take care of itself? Not so much in the last few years, but the idea this year is to generate more revenue, more focused advertising, increase staffing, to give it a chance to operate like it's supposed to operate. And let's just see what happens in a year. What does the cash picture look like at the end of this year? If it's still a problem, then yes, we're going to have to make some decisions next year about whether, how we do this golf course. It's not the first thing to do. So it's still something that could change in the future.
Thanks, I mean, that just helps, and to the extent their numbers are available for 2022, I'd like to see them. It also, I'm gonna, the second Mike's point about this merger, if it occurs, isn't about efficiencies. The savings are minuscule in the cost savings. In fact, to me, they need to be ramped up. I totally disagree that this combined organization can operate the way the two separate ones did. It needs to step up its game in personnel, and that includes administrative support. Unless the county's prepared to continue doing the accounting and all that kind of stuff, to me, there needs to be some kind of at least a half-time position. I don't know who does the bookkeeping currently, but bookkeeping, issuing checks, those kind of things shouldn't, well, they can be, but they shouldn't be done by Jason or an assistant to Jason. I mean, those two positions are key, so a lot of potential there. I agree, responsibility is one thing. No doubt that Jason, if he is the executive director, has got responsibility, but the time spent in execution of activities is primarily, we got to take advantage of what Jason's good at. And what he's good at is going out and getting deals. And I've seen that personally, and I've said before, he's one of the best hires I've ever been involved in a long checkered career. And it doesn't, that's just the fact of life. And so I really don't think this budget as presented, combining the two, is adequate. It might be what we have to live with somehow for 2023, but it should not be anything near. And I try to be a steward of public resources. I understand where they come from. They come from taxes, or they come from fees, or they come from the public, and that's a big responsibility. But the obligation back to the public is to do a good job, and that's why government accounting is different from corporate accounting. Corporate accounting, you're supposed to measure profit. Government accounting, you're supposed to measure effectiveness. And I'm a big believer in that. I've lived with it most of my career, and so I don't want to just see a combined entity, if there is one, doing business, cobbling a business plan together. And I agree, it's going to be messy. It's going to take a while, but that's what, if this goes forward, that's what we have to commit to doing. And I probably can commit to that. I still have angst about the Housing and Redevelopment Authority and the effort that was put into it, and the reason it was created, and the reason it's separate, and then the position of housing in a combined organization. And I still have angst about that. I'm relieved to some degree about the angst, because both of the chairs of the boards have shown that they have an interest in housing, and that they've effectively done housing stuff, and that's a big benefit in terms of if the merger goes forward. And so those are issues that I'm thinking about. In ballpark, I'll skip that. With any luck, tomorrow afternoon, the HRA board will adopt a conflict of interest policy. This gets back to a small community. We just saw Jason Hill, being hauled in front of the public on some rumor that he was taking, part in the development activities and making money from it. I never doubted Jason Hill was not doing that. But the reality is, we don't have a conflict of interest policy that says you cannot do that, and if you have a conflict, here's what you have to do to remedy it. And so I hope that the EDA board members would consider that themselves, because the reality is, it's a small community, and if I were an EDA commissioner, I'd have a conflict of interest with a golf course. I live on the golf course. The value of my property is tied totally to that golf course. So I got a dog in the fight, as my dad would say, and that's a conflict, and I need to disclose those kind of things, and so but with any luck, as I say, by tomorrow afternoon we'll have one. at the HRA, and I would highly recommend it as a public purpose for the EDA as well. I guess I've said enough for the time being. I'll just, I'm still thinking about this, and I have concerns, but I also have some optimism. I've said this before, I'm blessed to be in Cook County for many reasons, believe me, and some are personal and some of them are professional, and it's watching the county. I haven't had much exposure to the city government, but the county government, given what the size of this place is, I think really professional, and the professionalism of it has increased in the time we've had a place up here, and that's really a good thing. So that's enough for me.
Bill, thank you.
Could I just talk about efficiencies a little bit? Because I use the term.
And Myron, I just want to watch our time here. We got
Sure.
a hard stop
Quickly.
before we got some other.
Efficiencies, when I use it, I talk about time and what you're spending your time on. And so the personnel administrators, you're not writing checks, delivering checks. You're working, the highest person with the most skills in an organization devotes most of their time to what they're prepared to do. And so I would just want to define efficiencies in the context of time and what you spend your time on.
Tracy? We're kind of going around the room. That's why I'm calling on you.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe Mike said some things, I don't know.
Well, Mike said some.
I said some good
So I wanted,
He's still sitting here, so
Yeah.
he doesn't better run out.
I better listen for a little bit. I don't
Okay,
want to be
yeah, that's fine.
repetitive.
I
I have
just didn't
some
want to skip
thoughts,
over you.
but my guess, or they may have already been said, but I'll listen first.
Yeah, you're right, this HRA document was the HRA suggestions or their ideas about a merger. It wasn't the EDA response to that, so you haven't really seen the EDA response to that. But my belief from the beginning is that there's going to be HRA and an EDA, they're going to come together, and the responsibilities aren't going anywhere, the obligations aren't going anywhere. They remain the same, just that the management team will be responsible for both HRA and EDA stuff. It's our job to make sure that they have the resources and the tools and the staffing to do their job as best as they possibly can. And I think that's very doable. It looks like we're stuck with 23 budgets, so it could be tight. 23 going forward, this comes together in some fashion, might be bumpy. But I think appropriately we should go to the county, we should ask for full resources to staff this supposed merged board that goes that direction, make sure it's done right. And I think then you'll see what we hope to see, And I think that's very capable, right? And it's very doable. So I'm optimistic.
Point of clarification is I think definitely the city too.
Yes,
Is that what
the
you
city.
did?
Yeah, the city. Yeah, I think really, it's like, is it both county and city equally funded?
No, I think the funding conversation is mostly at the county.
Yeah.
If we ever talk about who's going to be on the board, that's next.
Correct.
I'd just like to say that I share Mr. Gator's angst on the other side, and everyone knows that. I'm very concerned that the EDA and the EDA's past accomplishments are recognized as well as things that we're currently working on, and that they don't get lost in the mix if we do merge. I think there's a lot of reasons for a merged organization, but I know how busy I've seen the HRA, and the HRA board is very active, and there's lots of things going on. I know what's going on the EDA side. It's a big job. And I just want to make sure that the EDA's efforts are not lost in the mix, because although I did misread that document that Mary just explained well, I do think that even the small meeting that we had, housing continues to be the foremost issue that everybody wants, number one, number two, number three, and that leaves me a concern about what's going on with the EDA efforts that are currently on the table, and that those are going to be in the future. So we've talked about it. I don't doubt that lumpy's a good word. It could be very difficult, but that's the only thing I bring to the forefront. And if the organizations merge, I think the new board has to be very concerned about understanding what's going on with the leadership team and helping them and supporting it. Because it's bumpy, a very nice word, that's the word I think it's going to happen for the first 6 months.
I do appreciate the document the HRA put together that helped clarify some of the questions I have. But I guess it's kind of fun being the last person. I can say, yes, I agree with you. The golf course, I agree. The golf course is a big issue that has kind of been neglected the last few years. I'm really glad Board of Governors, you know, they're getting back together and they're doing strategic planning and coming up with a plan. I'm very hopeful that that can be solved in that process. But I don't want any effort of Jason's being taken away for EDA issues. EDA board right now, I think, makes sense right now. I was opposed to combining HRA and EDA at the beginning because there was a lot of work that needed to be done at the EDA. I see it happening. I know the new board, there's things happening. I'm a lot more confident that this, if we're going to merge, this is probably a better time to merge. I guess I see that, but I'm still wondering about expectations going forward, because you know you've got things you're working on. Well, we've just said the HRA is responding well. We don't have time for new things, so now what? What happens? I worry about how that might pan out, and then somebody's going to be mad that we failed at something. So.
That's a given.
Or we missed an opportunity, more so than fail. I don't think fail is the right word.
No, I wouldn't use that. Others would.
I just want to say, because this is being publicly broadcasted, I want to say the golf course has not been neglected for the last couple of years. The relationships maybe haven't been quite as tight as they should have been, but the golf course has been managed very well, as well as. That's not what I didn't mean. Hey, yeah. But we just heard Mr. Gabler say delayed maintenance and staffing issues.
Yeah.
That's where, and I would pick up on that and knowing the history.
Yeah.
But hey, there's a group meeting to say how we're gonna fix this. Really appreciative of that. It's time.
Yeah.
A little late in my opinion, but hey, it's happening. Yay.
Good stuff going on there, and just to remind everyone that the golf course is where it's at because of maybe poor decisions that were made in the past. We do the best we can with the cards we were dealt. So.
Right. And it is a major asset. It is important we make that golf course successful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I don't want Jason's time.
Right, that's why
Pulled away.
That's why
my
we
concern.
added this other.
I like that idea.
That's important for everyone to take a level of comfort that there's good work going on by other people that are not at this table.
Stacy, thank you. We've got about 10 minutes left. Jason, do you have some follow-up comments about what was said? You've been typing away there.
Taking notes for the emails I can know. Well, a couple if that's okay, and I'll try to, I know maybe it's just time. I'm trying to, and you two have been running this conversation, these meetings as much as possible, and I've been trying to keep myself out of that. Obviously, it's not my decision. And I don't get to choose my own bosses, as fun as that would be, as Mary likes to say.
No.
Not that I would change any of them. Of course.
Good save, good save.
I meant future boss. Anyway, something that I think that that I've been grappling with or trying to understand about. So what I think I've heard is the financial concerns or potential concerns, which is more out of a place of not understanding the exact position of the EDA and not understanding where things sit. Most of those have been placated or put to rest, with the exception of maybe some final documentation on 2022 financials. That's what I think I've heard. There aren't outstanding significant concerns about the health of the EDA. That was one potential pitfall or conversation piece that we had to work through. I think that I'm hearing that that's mostly dealt with. So what we're really talking about now is time, my time management, and expectation management. That's what I keep hearing. Is and expectations kind of writ large. The EDA has obvious existing obligations that cannot be ignored and that come with the territory. The HRA is about to incur some of those. You know, we're on the cusp of a couple of projects that will be, you know, when ink hits the page, that's where we have agreements specific to our entity. This is really a conversation about, and this is obviously just my subjective opinion. This is a conversation about managing board expectations, community expectations, and time. The priorities of the organization, this is all assuming it was merged. Priorities of a merged organization, especially new efforts. So if the EDA wants to try to do some, let's say Business Park Round 2. I'm not advocating any of this, so it's just hypothetical. You want to expand this business park. That comes before a joint board who gets to decide what that priority is. So if it continues to be the priority that the existing obligations of the EDA and the future projects are going to be housing-centric until such time as that issue is dealt with sufficiently, then that's the priority that's set by the joint board. There seems to be this sort of amorphous concept that there's still, even when it's merged, there's going to be two competing entities. And I keep trying to think of like, well, no, it's going to be one entity where they all talk to each other and decide what is the unified objective here. And the ultimate question is that more effective than having them separate? And I said this in the last meeting, if we could pretend that what would you call it, speed bump or messy or something like that. If we pretended that in the immediate, I have to do this, I have to put blinders on, because if I think of the next 6 months, if we merge, I'm like, ooh. If we pretended that wasn't there, is the ultimate outcome, kind of like what Mr. Roth was saying, is that if that's better than the short-term pain is worth it. That's what I think and I would contend. So if the new board, which is made up of individuals that share priorities that talk about them, they set the new agendas, they set the budget, they talk with the county about staffing. It isn't us and them anymore, it's one unified group. All of those things are determined by a joint board. So I just think for me it's helpful to bring that into like real context. There is no more EDA versus HRA, there is one group of people. And the conversation is, do we want one instead of two? I'm almost done, promise. Can we have a greater impact community-wide? And maybe this is my fault because I think of housing as so intimately tied with economic development that it's hard to, it's like you kind of have to force to separate them. Because you go to the same partners a lot of the time, it's the same kind of conversations about infrastructure and job centers, and like there's so much overlap. So to some extent, we separate them largely now because we have these two entities. But can we have a larger impact as a community if they work together under the same umbrella? I think on balance, the answer is yes, despite the short-term pain. I mean, like I've said before, I will do whatever people decide. But if I had to pick, I would say yes. I think there is more efficiency, isn't that words?
Never say it again.
Never say it again. And well, I would agree with, I actually made a note, and before Myron had said anything, when I think of efficiencies, it's not about cost, it's about time. And it's about funding conversations, and it's about partnerships and relationships. It's about efficiencies of having a funnel through which these conversations happen, and then being able to delegate and disseminate. So you just have to trust that whoever is going to be working this organization is able to manage their time. If I have to spend time as the ED on golf course issues because something happens, yeah, that's probably going to happen. Then the question is, do we have somebody that I can delegate something else to? Because I have capacity limits, the person that we would hire has capacity limits, but the question I guess it's a question of what kind of person do you want in a role doing what? And like, I think Bill spoke to the skill sets earlier or whatever, or maybe it's you, Chris, talking about an operations person. If there's somebody else who can say, hey, actually, can you attend the Tofty Town Board meeting tonight because I've got to go take this other issue? That's the whole point of having a team. Whereas when you have them separate, you can't do that. Like, there's no one right now for me to go ask, like, hey, I have this other fire that came up that I have to put out. I'm going to go put that out, and I have to cancel this other meeting. So So that's one strength of having a team where you can divide and conquer. And the last thing I'll say is the reason that I've thought a lot about this, probably too much. My wife's probably so bored of it. I struggle with it from time to time because the workload, like development happens in waves and valleys. That's the nature of it. That's the nature. There's 65-hour weeks, and then there's some weeks where you're like just waiting to get that response email so that you can finish something. Having said that, if you have the right people in place, if I had the right person that was working with me, who I could delegate some of the things that Bill talked about, like writing checks and doing vouchers for the county and doing the administrative stuff, I get excited about the idea of looking at larger scale, long-term development planning and things that are right now divorced only because we have separate entities. Not because they intuitively or naturally or economically would be divorced, but we separate them because we have two entities. So I think delegation, of the ability to delegate, and time management, this comes down to a group of board members who have to understand that there's going to be some learning and some time, and they're going to have to manage their expectations about, particularly the EDA, just about we're going to take care of existing obligations until we get our arms around everything, and then we look at what doors open. But there has to be a little bit of, I don't know how long that is, maybe it's 2 months, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 8 months. But until we get everything kind of sorted and our housekeeping done, we're not going to do a ton of new initiatives until we get kind of settled in, if that makes sense. That's my 2 cents. That's it. I have thoughts about that.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if Tracy had.
And you have something at 4 o'clock, you have to call a public hearing or something?
No, we just have a meeting, a special.
There's a little flex because the EDA meeting's about this. So
Steve's just hard now.
I'm trying to keep us on time.
I know, I know.
So, same question then I asked at the very first meeting, I'll ask one more time. Are we doing this because it's Jason, or are we doing this because it makes sense? Because my planning background says you gotta manage risk. Don't wish you unhappiness or sad things.
thank you, Tracy.
But things sometimes do happen and there's that risk, so is this smarter? Would we be having this conversation otherwise? Because we're worried about replacing, the ability to replace an EDA director. Now we're looking at someone with, I think, a very high skill set level, and then where's the risk there? Just ask all of you to think about that. And why are we doing this? I think it makes sense, but not right now. I kind of take a different, maybe than Stacey or Pat on that. And what I keep hearing is it makes sense if we can separate and it's HRA stuff first. Well, that's not the reality, and you just said it. I think we all really know that. You're getting, these things are going to come and go, and you've got to be able to move. And I would want you to do no less than to be shifting gears and attending to them as it needed to be. And thank you for bringing up a conflict of interest. It's very much needed. I think that's a really good thing to do. And I personally am not a golfer, I'll admit it, but I also don't think the future of golf is very promising much of anywhere. And I don't know how much effort we could put into it and find success. Even if you try really hard, I wouldn't blame any of you if we didn't find success, because I just don't think that's where the world of golf is going. But I applaud everyone's super hard efforts. I think it should be the best we can do with it. But I can see where it might not end up.
Well, and well, we sell it. And that's, someone else operates the golf course, it'd be a private entity, most
Yeah.
likely, so. Is
It
that-
just means it's in it.
Is that the end of the world? I don't think it's the end of the world either. So I think it's just, it's possible that might happen. So, but that's the end, that's the solution to that problem.
If you find someone, and then you have to ask the potential how much loss they're going to.
Well, right, I don't think that would be a problem right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a positive.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that we can find much of it, anybody, I just, how it settles out there. I agree. I mean, I think, let's think of this, what happens if both directors were open right now? There wasn't anybody running HRA or running EDA, what would we do? I think a lot of us would think, okay, great time to merge, right? I'll only hire one really good person to do this. So,
I wouldn't think that.
yeah, but
I
just
was
think
that
I think-
person.
Yes, Jason's here, yes, he's very skilled, and I think it clouds some of our thinking on this. I think irregardless if Jason wasn't here or not, I think the opportunity is you hire someone just like Jason, with a high skill set, and you fill that role. And when Jason moves on,
Everybody
and
is.
moves on, at some day, we'll be looking to replace him, and that's exactly what we'll be doing. We'll be looking for someone just like Jason, high skill set, to fill that role. So,
Probably have to pay him twice as much.
you know what, and I agree, look at, I mean, I agree, these budgets, I mean, I agree with what Mike said. I mean, we need to put more money into this. We can't run these organizations with these limited budgets and then expect one person to do all this work. If Beth was one person, Jason's one person, there's no admin, you know? So that would be, we should really look at that too.
That's a real level-setting thing in my mind as well. Even if we didn't merge, everybody needs help, because both these organizations have a lot of different aspects, from administrative levels all the way up to the higher level that need support.
I'm not familiar with the water, but the city needs help, the county needs help, HRA needs help, the EDA. I see a lot of, I saw a lot of opportunities. You know, the capital improvement plan,
You're
city
sitting
building,
here
city
with your
hall.
EDA hat on right now, remember that?
I wear all hats. All hats all the time, sleeve.
Okay, we're a little over time budget here. Is there a specific next step? Are we meeting as a group again? Are we moving forward as our individual organizations at this point in time? Nils?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 3 big questions from Mike that I think could a lot of value in answering. Other concerns that we might want to think more about? And
I have 2 more things on the list here of the conflict of interest policy that Tracy and Bill both.
Oh, and I would also, the merge board, did you bring that, Aaron? Who brought that up? Merge board?
Mary mentioned it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that legally, we got 2 legal entities here, so how does this actually work? If they were to merge, what happens? Is it redistricting, and is it just in EDA districts? I mean, how does it go?
my understanding is the kind of limitation that we need to work with the state statute around our EDA. That is the biggest, largest shackles there. And so we need to be able to make that happen with the representation that's required for that. I don't know that there's much of a hurdle for the legal entities to.
And we've already checked legal counsel on this about the mechanism for that.
Correct.
So the EDA, in the statute, it is stated that the EDA can have the authorities of Housing and Redevelopment Authority. So we would dissolve the HRA and bring it up under the EDA. The county and the city would have to approve that move.
The board members, so how does that?
The county and then the board members in the statute, 4 of the board members are appointed by the county and 3 of the board members are appointed by the city. And we would follow that unless or until we go to St. Paul and amend the legislation, which we can do in the future. We can't do it this session. I don't think we could give it a shot, but it's kind of crazy to think about doing that right now.
Well, with the EDA board and the HR board members released of their obligations, and then the county just comes in and says, okay, here's our 4, and the city says, here's our 3, or
Well,
are we going to reshuffle the cards, or is it just?
Well, I'm going to just go back to my checklist here because I didn't get a chance to finish it. So the other items, other than the conflict of interest policy, is that we owe the financial statements for the golf course and the EDA to the group. Who's will they have that?
And didn't we say
Which
something
one?
about the audit too?
Yep, the audit, I have one here at the
Okay,
checklist started.
I got that on my list too.
They've already got it.
Right.
Yes,
got it.
and you have it in
Yeah,
your book,
yeah,
yeah.
I did.
I just resent it,
Yeah.
so, it's the audit stuff.
Okay.
So do you want to,
I mean, I sort of feel like what I'm hearing here is that I think we need to send out these items as the checklist so that everybody has them and has time, that are on the checklist, so that everyone has time to review it. And then it feels like maybe we need to get back together as a group and talk about it again after we've had a chance to look at these items.
Can you remind me what the items are again?
Yep, so I'll just run down it. So the audit information, which everyone has.
We're
And
good.
we won't have 22
We
audit
can cross that
information
off
for a
the list.
while,
Yeah, that's-
okay?
No.
A budget with a little bit more detail.
Which is not up to, it would be the boards to decide who that budget. You want a budget, I mean, that's the thing.
we can plug in a few more line items that
Sure.
we can do.
Yeah,
In
that's,
particular, calling out the bond.
yeah, we can put the 60,000 if that's the biggest
The
concern.
60,000.
A combined vision plan, because we have the HRA questions, which is really this document, and then, but maybe something that sort of outlines the responsibilities.
Who's going to write that?
I don't know, I'm just writing, I'm just
I think
creating a
that's a good
checklist.
idea though, and we talked about that in that small group meeting we had too. I think getting an idea of how it's going to look is going to help everyone.
But who decides that?
The combined board.
Right, that's my point.
Well, we'll have, I think it's a subcommittee type thing, don't you?
There's no obligation by any subcommittee, it's gonna be the combined board that has that authority, so.
That's what I was trying to get at earlier,
Yeah.
some of my comments, is
There
all of
are-
these details have to be
Right.
decided by the joint board if they decide to merge. The question is, do we want to merge?
But how can you decide to merge if you don't know what you're merging?
Well, you know what we're merging, 'cause we
What's it
know.
going to look like?
Well, right.
Yeah.
Nobody knows that.
You're talking about priorities, though. We don't know what the priorities are, so the board gets together and decides what the priorities are, right? Is that?
Correct.
I
New
think
board.
we have 3 standing priorities that we have to continue.
Right,
Right?
right.
We have housing, we have Cedar Grove, and we have the golf course. Those are the priorities to begin with.
And we have childcare.
Childcare.
The grants,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
any grants that we have to
Yeah, all
maintain.
the
Grants,
current,
yeah.
sure,
Right.
all the current things come with whatever it
Right, and
is.
it's so,
But not adding anything new until the merged board.
so what do,
And strategizing how to address all of everything too.
right, so what is this document gonna say then? I mean, just, here's our obligations, our current ongoing obligations, here they are. The merged board will decide how to prioritize these obligations.
We already know all of it, so what else is, that's what I'm
Yeah,
not clear on,
so
what
he's
else
the
do we
audience
talk
here.
about?
You know,
Yeah.
if we all know them, why did we write down a list that didn't include them all? And if we're trying to communicate to folks what this is all about, why don't we have the whole list?
We can.
Yeah.
We can update the list with.
I want you to focus on housing, and we will write the vision. Okay. And then we'll share it with all of you, and you can add to it and ask more questions, and we'll keep adding to it. How does that sound? It's not Jason's work to do this, it's ours.
Well, I don't mind doing the work, it's just the point that
No, the
nothing,
time.
you know, it's not even that, it's the question of, like, those things don't really, a lot of this stuff doesn't get decided until there's a vote at a joint board. Like, you can't decide it.
I think what I'm hearing in the room here, I hear what you're saying, but I think what I'm hearing in the room is that we need to flesh this out a little bit more, because there's still gonna be a conversation at the city, and there's gonna be a conversation at
To
the
be able to talk
county,
to that.
and there's gonna be the public there, and I think we have to have it a little bit more fleshed out in some more detail in order for those conversations to go okay.
But speaking of risk management there,
Yeah.
so we do that, we flesh it out, and then the joint board gets together and be like, wait, we don't wanna do this. And then the public says, well, you said you're gonna, or the city says you said you're gonna, or the county says you said you're gonna, you know, so it almost seems pointless to really go too far down that road, or dangerous, you might even say.
But some of it, it's a given, there's not gonna be a
Right.
lot of daydreaming and possibilities here. There are quite a laundry list of current responsibilities. I don't know how much beyond that we will be going, and nothing so far that I know of gets dropped off, right?
Yeah, unless the current
You can write it.
responsibilities make sense.
We'll write
Could
something.
you write it in terms of goals to maintain, you know, I mean, the goal would be, our intention of making this recommendation is based on these goals. To maintain what we're doing in housing, you see what I mean? rather than to say that's the way it's gonna be. It's our intent, our goal to frame it now.
I guess, I'm not sure, is there anyone that thinks it's a better idea for EDA to go out and hire a new director? Something has to happen soon, and EDA needs to go out and hire a new director who manages the EDA programs, or we decide, no, it's better to try to merge the organizations, and it's gonna be bumpy, and it's gonna be, and if it makes more sense to merge, then I kind of agree with Jason that it's good to accelerate the merger, but recognize that we have some work to do, not in messaging to ourselves, not to, informing ourselves more to a significant more degree so we can make a decision on that, but because we need to be able to explain the decision to the public in terms of these are the knowns, these are the unknowns, and the joint board is going to resolve these. But we've decided on balance, it makes more sense to try to manage this as a merged organization. So I guess I'm in favor of moving more quickly, just because the opportunity cost is right now we don't. We've got you as the acting ED for EDA, but that's we need to do something, and I think it's and if we don't do the merger, then we need to get busy with hiring a new director for EDA.
I agree exactly.
For just a second, thinking talked about what would the board structure look like, and we've got the 4 and the 3, but I think we should maybe go in a little bit more detail so people can actually envision that a little bit better. Because right now, I know for me it was a bunch of blanks till we met last week.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna guess it could be for some of the rest of the people around this room, so we should probably do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mary?
So,
Did we write that, you wrote that down? Or let's do it?
yeah, this is what we have shared as a possibility. The 4 to be appointed by the county, these are all existing on HRA or EDA at this time. The 4 to be appointed by the county would be Gabler, O'Brien, Sonnes, and Serba. And the 3 by the city are Benson, Gersheim, and Shackleton. And once the board is merged, typically bylaws say, I don't know if this is in the EDA bylaws at this time, but it could be, that boards can invite as many ex officio as they feel is appropriate. And the suggestion is that we would invite both Hawkins and Mills to serve as ex officio, because currently Commissioner Mills is with the EDA and Commissioner Hawkins is with the HRA. And it would be really valuable to our organization to keep them both at this time. Not a lifetime commitment that the merged board would always have to commissioners. And I know that we would have to bring that to the county for approval, and I did mention it to County Board Chair Sullivan, and she said if and when we decide to go forward, then the first thing would be that she would ask County Attorney Hicken for an opinion and whatever needs to be done about that. And so that's what we have discussed.
I don't think it's too out of the ordinary, it's just, we don't really have, the only county committee that I'm aware of was the Emergency Management Committee.
That had
had
one.
2, and now I think that's down to 1, but it's not revolutionary or anything.
Yeah, and it just would be, for a time, as you stay with us through this messiness, and then once we get it all figured out. I just think that would be, to me,
Tracy, did that answer your question?
Okay, except I do have one question because of that. I mean, I know the 4 and the 3, but is it also a given that we will have always 1 county commissioner and 1 city person too within that, so that the choices goes down?
the statute doesn't say that. It's just been tradition.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't know how that.
The statute just says 4 appointed by the county and 3 appointed by the city.
It also has limitations on how many can be elected officials.
You've read it more recently than I have.
Probably more often.
It's a fun little, yeah. Don't underestimate what an asset it is to have a seated county board member
Oh.
on your board.
Right, yeah, for
They
real.
control your budget.
Right.
Like, you want them at the table.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
do whatever it takes to get them at the table. Now, for the city, we have the exact opposite problem. We need access to this because we don't have it any other way. And you need us to be partners in this. And a seat at the table is the best partnership. And it's one of the questions about the HRA that we kind of went into with some faith without knowing how we were going to work this out. How are we going to stay informed about what's going on at the HRA? It's better to have a seat at the table.
I agree.
And that was my concern when you listed this off, that Tracy got a vote and then Dave did not.
I don't want
I
to.
do.
We get our votes.
No, because I do, I think that's important. I have issues with other things I'm on. Why does the city get a vote and county doesn't get a vote?
You get all the votes, though. You control
I
the
know.
budget.
That doesn't go well. Did you watch the last meeting?
But Tracy wouldn't necessarily have to serve, or the council, you could appoint someone, right?
But that's, I think it's important
I
though.
do too.
Yeah, I agree. That's
I do
right.
too, but, I mean, you're still in control. The city nominates 3, so you can choose to hold back one and nominate someone on the board, right, in the city council.
Yeah.
Right, so you're in complete charge of it, right?
Yep.
Likewise with the
Oh, I
county.
still, sure.
The county's in complete charge of it. No, we're not gonna nominate somebody. We have someone on the board we're gonna place.
Oh, sure.
It's not.
And I would remind us again that this is only for this moment in time. One of the shortfalls of this list is that it does not give us anyone on the merged board representing the east end of the county. And when the HRA was formed, it wasn't written anywhere, but the intent of the county board was to have one person from each of the 5 commissioner districts. The next go around, we can seek someone from the east end to become one of these members. And the other thing that we can do, to put on the list of the merged board to talk about, is if we want to change the statute, how do we want to change the statute? No other EDA or HRA that I know of in the state of Minnesota is governed by a state statute. They are all governed by local decisions, by the counties and the cities where they reside. And we can go to the legislature and say, thank you for 30 years of what we've had, but now we're ready to take this upon ourselves in our community and make these decisions without being governed by the state. We just aren't ready to take that step.
I just wanted to talk a little bit more about my experiences as an ex officio member and the value of having a seat at the table with the vote, or not without a vote. If as an ex officio, you're still at the table, and I have yet to feel excluded from the table as an ex officio member. I'm not sure. I mean, for me, I'm totally comfortable with that. You know, but what I'm sensing is there's a similar level of discomfort with that situation from Commissioner Hopkins as, say, it is for me from giving up a committee, an ex officio committee, to another. It's just you like to be involved and you want to do as much as you can. But I think we can still do a lot without the vote at that table, because we have the vote at that table ultimately.
Yeah,
so.
I didn't get a vote at HRA, so.
Right.
I didn't.
But we include you in.
But you are influential.
Yeah.
When you speak, we listen.
You're the money.
And you can just be extreme and then say, but I don't get a vote.
I think the perspectives that you both bring are extremely valuable, and I think you're both very committed to the seats that you now have without votes, with votes, without votes.
I would also suggest there's a gender perspective here we need to consider as well. A gender perspective. I think there needs to be representation from a lot of different views.
Sure.
I think that's a good point, I think, as well with the new hire. Yeah, just that should be a priority.
question that came up with this list. I get getting the people here in the room. But I'm thinking as a county board appointing people, we have a process for applications. So if we're saying that this is a new, I kind of think we need to say, we have 4 positions open. We certainly hope these 4 people apply. But we have to also advertise it to others and not just say, we've got our select group. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, you sure can. There's no harm. Except for maybe delay.
Well,
Well,
you know,
I can think of a lot of things. I mean, like going forward with the work that's already in progress.
How does the makeup feel for everybody? I mean, we've heard some concerns about city representation, gender representation, county representation. Are there other concerns? East End representation. Another perspective I wanted to bring, for various commissions, we have a really difficult time filling seats if they are,
Right.
have to be for a district.
Right.
There's just, I think we have to cast a wide net and then through the application process. Yeah.
and I would also add for the 2 current board members who are not on this possible list, both of those terms expire at the end of this year.
Correct.
And both have agreed that they would step down early to accommodate this if it was in the best interest of the community.
Wow.
What do folks, focus on the solution end of this. What should we do for process? What do we need to do to make people, to have people comfortable one way or the other? I am, believe it or not, I really do think I want to make sure we give this the time that it needs. And this is, if I just wear my HRA hat, this is the EDA's problem at the moment without director. So that I'm obviously sympathetic to wanting to help the EDA be successful, right? That's a little crass, but at the same time, like, I know that we're competing. We need to make sure that we make a decision relatively soon in the interest of the larger community and the EDA. What is it that we need to determine in order to decide we want to move forward or not? I think we could have another meeting. I'm not sure that another meeting to talk about these things that we will talk about for a long time. We can have 4 more meetings and we want to have all the details or like ironed out. So to Commissioner O'Brien's earlier comment, is there anybody who thinks we should keep them separate and is committed to that course? And if there is, fine. If there isn't, and the majority think otherwise, then what is the path to continue down that way?
This feels a little disingenuous because the EDA has not even attempted to fill their current opening. And we don't have a real choice in front of us anymore.
We've talked about it directly. It's a conscious choice.
But asking the question now, should we merge, which is really the one thing that's been worked towards, or should we stay separate, which is we have really no idea how we're going to do that anymore.
Well, both take significant energy. And it's like, where do we want to put our energy? Where do we think our energy is most wisely spent? Our efficiencies.
So let me ask a different, completely hypothetical question that's about as relevant as the one that I just heard. If we got a candidate that we thought was awesome for the EDA director in the door today, would we be comfortable hiring them and moving forward?
Not today.
I think we have to address this issue if we're going to merge or not.
If you got a dynamite superstar candidate, actually the second best hire he's ever made in his career, that walked in the door today.
They haven't even posted it, it's not possible.
That's my point. You haven't even posted it. It's unrealistic.
We made a conscious choice to put our energy in that way.
Short-term wait, not forever wait.
Pat committed till June 1st.
Yeah, we had a meeting with Pat and asked her how long she would stay at interim. And so she gave us a date.
Similar question.
And that's somewhat of a goal, I think.
I think that's what we thought about it, the goal. Yeah, right.
Similar question.
June 1st. I
So,
mean, there's certainly, I would certainly not ever leave this position without anything in it, but we have to have some goals. I'm with everybody who talks about goals, and so that would be the day. But I would say, I'm with Chris on this thing. I believe, right now, this is a trust me. This is a conversation we've had, trust me. Trust me, the EDA is going to be taking into account all of the things that we're working on right now. Trust me that the HRA is still going to get all the attention it needs to get. There's a lot of trust me's, and as, I'm going to say as a woman, I don't believe any of these trust me's until I see it in writing. And I think a high-level vision statement on these are the priorities of both organizations that we're going to combine would make me and a lot of the general public knowledgeable about what's going on. So I'm not saying we need to create the organizational structure in the document, but I think the things that were said around this table, I believe, but, well, luckily we have them on film. But I think that was a good idea that Chris had.
So, sorry, to be clear, so the idea of putting together sort of a larger vision statement, is that what
Of the priorities of both.
I think first we decide if the HRA wants to merge and the EDA wants to merge, and those two things happen, then I think, okay, now we have to sell the idea, right? And so now you have to talk about putting together this document, this vision statement, and presenting it to the city councils, presenting it to the Cook County commissioners. And then the public at large too, let them chew on it, let them talk about it, and then it's our wish to combine them, we answer those questions. You know, and we respond to all the concerns. And then they vote on it, yea or nay, and we move on, you know. But I think I have enough information. I know it's messy, I know we have all the I's dotted, T's crossed, but I have enough to vote. I feel tough enough to vote on it. So, I mean, that's really the question is, are we comfortable enough to vote? So HR should go back to their meeting and they vote, yea or nay, and the EDA does the same. And then we move on. Take the next step.
Then we get into the details.
So we take the next step. Yeah, there's no reason, I don't think there's another reason to come together like this. You know, what else is there to chew on, you know, so.
Thank you, Mark, that was more articulately trying to
Okay.
say what I was
Appropriate to call for the question?
Well, we're not.
There's no
Yeah.
voting left.
Yeah, this is that, so
Okay.
we'd have to separate it and do our thing in the next meetings, you know.
Okay, so we're not,
No, we'll just.
Give us 5 minutes.
meeting following this.
I
The the only motion here is to adjourn.
Yeah, like 27 minutes ago.
Okay, so.
I tried.
Thanks a lot, Steve.
But-
Thanks a
tried.
lot.
But
So
Steve, we
us a
could
chance.
move this question to next Tuesday, it's a week away, and put it to the full board as well.
In the meantime, we can write the document that puts it in writing or,
But we were talking now about not writing document, aren't we?
well, not with a great level of detail, but just a
I mean,
little bit.
if somebody
more.
on these combined boards needs the information, right, it makes it more comfortable to make a decision, then yes, produce what you need to produce, but I would not produce something for the public right now.
No, just.
Okay, ready to.
Yeah.
And it's been a while since I looked at the resolution that you prepared. I think some of what people are asking for is in the resolution, the whereas, right? Whereas. If you read the whereases, there's some stuff in there that might answer some questions. One thing that I am wondering about, Commissioner Hawkins, if you believe the county would want to create a clean slate of board members to appoint to this merged board, the HRA would need to know that, because I think the current commissioners of the HRA would want to know if they were going to stay on the board of the HRA before they would vote themselves away. Because they brought a lot of.
is that true?
No. Not true.
Not for you?
No.
Okay,
Me either.
okay, just making sure.
No.
Very good,
You're ready.
never mind.
And I'm not saying, I'm not even voting in, right? I have to go back and check with the
With
person,
Administrator
with this,
Yorkie?
what is our process? I don't know for sure, I just
It's a good
raised that
question.
though.
Yeah,
But
okay.
Background
think-
checks.
you guys don't get to pick the people, I think it's us, so.
Commissioner, I can say I know what our usual process is, but this is an unusual situation. so-
Right.
Correct. Yeah, I don't know that anything like this has ever happened before.
So, but like I said, ultimately, we get the vote,
Yes.
and
Correct.
we can overrule you if we don't want you there, right?
You can send us home.
I appreciate that thinking. Personally, I don't think it would be, I wouldn't want to do that at this point. I want to keep continuity and I want to keep progress going. I think that's the
Yeah, I
best way.
think-
Yeah.
The experience in this room would be
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, yeah.
Make sure they're still at the table.
There's a motion on the floor to adjourn.
Is there a second?
This is a working session, so you can't take that.
The chair can just.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, right.
Well, you
Did
get
you
my
just issue a
drift.
violation?
Go turbo mode here.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate the effort.
Good group.
Thank you.
You're in trouble.
So there's no reason to have an EDA meeting, right?
We
I'm just
are?
seeing
I'm
trouble
at- I said that I
saying.
don't